And so I'm going to call the February 9th organizational meeting for the Committee on Legislative Matters to order. This is a hybrid format, and it will be broadcast later on Comcast Channel 15 and on the Northampton Government Video Archive on YouTube. Live public comment will be available using the Zoom link. So anyway, here we are. Welcome, new committee. We are going to start with a roll call.
Sure. Councilor Maori.
Here.
Councilor Loisel.
Here.
Councilor
Remotely.
Perry.
Here.
And Councilor Stratton.
Here.
Okay. So we have everyone here today. Our first order of business will be the election of chair and vice chair of the Committee for Legislative Matters.
Okay.
So just like with full council, we'll take nominations, and folks can get nominated, and then we'll go to the nominee to speak, and then the rest of us could speak as well.
I'll go.
Yes, Councilor.
I'll nominate Councilor Loisel.
Okay. Nomination. Okay. Okay. Why don't we start with that nomination? This is for chair. Councilor Loisel, would you like to speak to that? Oh. Right. Oh, did you? I didn't see your hand.
I will nominate myself.
Okay. So we have two nominees. We'll go first to Councilor Loisel and then to Councilor Stratton.
Okay. Thank you for your nomination, Councilor Perry. And this was my top choice of committee to be on. I am deeply interested in the matters that come before it: ordinances, orders, resolutions, and city council rules. And I know it's not typical to have new counselors to be chairing committees, but we are kind of like a lot of new counselors. So we kind of need to do that to share the work. And one thing I am really good at is knowing what I don't know and getting help to figure it out. So I don't believe that I would overstep. And I feel like I've had a lot of experience chairing small and large boards, sometimes unruly, sometimes not. So I would be honored to serve as the chair of this committee.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess what we'll do, what we did with full council, when the nominees both speak, and then we'll just have a kind of a conversation. So Councilor Stratton, would you like to speak?
A constituent of mine, and maybe not one I generally agree with, recently reminded that we should be hard on the problem and soft on the people. And at a recent forum, it was suggested that as a community, we need to find our way back to being able to discuss uncomfortable topics productively. I came into the job of counselor very studied on the issues and on our task, but less familiar than I'd realized with some of the process. I'd already understood that much of our functional job as counselors is to translate our constituents' expressed concerns into the proper exercise of government function. But through a number of wonderful recent conversations, I've also come to understand a similar process of translating my concerns of process into the process by which government deliberates. So my personal task at the moment is to exercise that same moment of translation introspectively towards developing my fluency with our process. But we are convened here today to organize one of the most critical committees on the council. The task of a committee is to dig into the depth of an issue on behalf of the council. Although we will ultimately vote a recommendation, in many ways, that formalized opinion is incidental to our larger task, which is to be finders of fact. When we report back to the full council, we need to be providing not only our opinion, but also a fair summary of the evidence we have examined. When one reads the laws by which the Commonwealth delegates a small fraction of its power back to the municipal level, it becomes clear that even more than enabling local decision-making, a prime concern of the legislature was to prevent municipal government from engaging in adventurous or capricious legislation against our neighbors, For example, we're extremely limited in the forms of taxation and by extension tax relief, which we can employ. Sorry, I lost my place. Bad pagination here. Sorry. But in this committee, we'll be reviewing matters of profoundly powerful impact to the lives of our neighbors. Traffic regulations, as we have before us later today. Zoning rules, which profoundly shape where and how we live and what we can afford. These regulations are highly technical, requiring willingness to study the materials with which we are presented in depth and to seek out and examine supporting data. When we're presented with the product of hours, weeks, or months of work from other branches of government, we should respect that effort. But we need to be that second set of eyes, finding key issues which may have been overlooked or understated. Therefore, I would propose that when we evaluate matters brought to us, or when we consider writing legislation ourselves, we do so in a structured manner. First, we should endeavor to identify the problem or concern which legislation was intended to address. Next, we should examine the proposal of government action. Is it a valid exercise of authority? Does it address the problem? What other mechanisms could have been used? Are we sure that this is the most appropriate? And will the impact on lives that is the inescapable consequence of our rulemaking be in balance with the legitimate government purpose the new rule achieves? When we have done our research, we will vote. But as important as our vote, we should report our findings to the Council. Many times, this could be a task of the chair. But we should leave room as well for a supplemental report from a member who feels there were findings not sufficiently captured in the report of the chair. And most of all, as we deliberate as a small body, I want to express a commitment, and I hope it's one that we can all share, to make sure that a person who is speaking is truly heard and not silenced. Parliamentary procedure has incidental motions, such as points of information or order, which force a pause. But we should remember that they are a pause, either to inquire about a key detail or to express a concern of direction. We need to remember that these are situations where a speaker must only temporarily yield the floor to the incidental motion, after which in most circumstances, they should be permitted to resume and continue their remarks. And we will hear remarks with which we disagree. Sometimes they will raise questions of fact, and sometimes they will raise questions of conclusion. I hope that we can commit as a body to hearing the public and to hearing each other out, to parsing the concerns we have with the remarks that are made so that we come to understand their meaning. For being heard is not just about being allowed to speak. It is ultimately about the willingness to listen and to labor to understand the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Can I just ask a request of Councilor Stratton? I'm having a hard time seeing your face, so I'm wondering if you could maybe tip your computer just a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought we were primarily using the room cameras rather than the laptop, so I wasn't paying attention, but thank you.
Okay. So thank you, and we'll go back to the nominator. And then we'll speak to the, we can all speak, obviously.
So I will say first, one of the things I love about the subcommittees is it's a smaller chance for us to work together. One of the reasons why I nominated Councilor Loisel is because I know that she has worked to chair other committees, the Human Rights Commission, and other bodies. And I know that she has an attention to detail, not that Councilor Stratton doesn't, because he has evidenced that consistently. But that's the reason why I nominated Lori. I feel that it is important to have someone who has sort of chaired something before. And we are in a unique position where, you know, Councilor Maori is the president as well and has a lot on her plate. And I am chairing another subcommittee. And I'm learning to take a step back and ask for help and let people have space. And so that kind of is what brought me there for the chair. So that, you know, that's, I believe that whoever chairs this committee will have assistance from all of us. And I think that, you know, I'm glad that there's a discussion about who is ready.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I'll speak. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because you know, I thought about one of us who is more senior, and generally especially this committee is not, is not chaired by new folks, but we have a very new council. And so I am looking for folks who do have some chairing experience, because I think it's better practice to spread it out, to have different folks chairing and not have, say, the president also chairing finance or legislative matters. That's been my goal, but it is challenging with so many new folks. I appreciate, and it's true that part of my comfort with having a new chair here is that we have Councilor Perry, very experienced, and myself here to help and support. And so it's not like any chair would be doing this kind of alone on the fly. So that part I'm fine with. I agree with Councilor Stratton's description of subcommittees, and it's something we're all learning. And subcommittees, I do actually want to kind of speak to this generally to all the counselors. Subcommittees are really supposed to be a place with more latitude, more back and forth, more public input, and diving more deeply into issues. So I think whoever chairs is going to have to be committed to kind of really understanding the difference between that and maybe, say, a full council meeting, which is more formal, in terms of letting folks, fully express their ideas and such. And also to be open to hearing feedback so that we can have a productive committee. I was on the Human Rights Commission as a member under the chair of Councilor Loisel, and I thought she did an excellent job. And so I do have that memory and that comfort of knowing that. I think, this, we're all going to be learning. So yeah, that's the only thing I would ask, is really just kind of distinguishing how subcommittees operate a little differently. And since we're all kind of in new roles, we all need, and myself included, to be open to feedback about making sure that, we're striking the right balance of respecting counselors' time and the public's time, and also kind of doing our due diligence. I put Councilor Stratton on this committee, not only because it was on your request, but because I thought your analysis and your kind of checks and balances view would be of, a huge asset here on legislative matters. But my comfort level in terms of actually chairing would go with Councilor Loisel. So that's my feeling about it. And I do think, a subcommittee is really about everyone participating. So I think a lot of the things that you brought up are things that we should all be doing as members. So I don't think it's really limited to the chair to bring, for example, when we have split votes, we often come back to full council and explain them, and go to the minority, the dissenting vote, and have them explain their thoughts. And that's something we can do with this committee. We can bring it back. So I don't think anything's going to be left behind as long as we keep communicating. So that's where I'm at. Yeah. Do you want to speak? Yes, Councilor Stratton.
We are a new council with a lot of new members, and we've had 2.5 meetings at this point. And I think some mistakes have been made in those meetings, and I hope they're learning mistakes. I am troubled by an improperly executed attempt to clarify and find information on my part, and I own that. And I'm seeking to improve that. But I also saw a lot of just disinterest in digging into issues and attempts to suppress speech, and I am deeply, deeply concerned by that, because this is the primary representative democracy opportunity where the voice of the people is heard in the development of our legislation. I mean, this is where we can do it in detail. And we really need to be willing to take the time to hear the public, to look at the evidence. This committee in the past has done site visits, even convened public meetings on site. This is something that used to happen. I'm not saying we need to do that frequently, but we really need to be willing to take the time and do the work and we need to be facilitated by a chair who has the interest in that. And I'm frankly, I have concerns at the moment.
Right. Any,
Well, I'll just say may I speak?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. I also feel very respectful of the need to dig into information, and this committee needs to actually, I agree with every single thing Councillor Stratton said in his remarks in the beginning. But yeah, I think this needs to be a fact-based committee, and we need to work together well. I know how to work with people. I believe in the democratic process as well, and I also really want to hear from the public. So I think I feel prepared to do that. And my training as a journalism really helped me to know how to kick the tires and look under the hood and see what's underneath an ordinance or a resolution and look for unintended consequences. I think we have to do all of that, and we have to work together. So I like the idea of being on a smaller committee where we actually can roll up our sleeves and work together. So.
Okay, is there any more comments about chair? Take your time. I don't mean to rush you. I just, yeah, take a moment. I was actually thinking of kind of introducing pauses into our meetings, just because sometimes folks need a minute to, collect their thoughts. But
I do have something to say. Okay. If I could.
of course, yeah. We can be informal. I mean, it's a little harder when someone's on Zoom, but I'm kind of, I feel like I'm fine for, the next few seconds on chair with just people chiming in.
Yeah. So here's what I just want to reiterate too, is that I'm not taking this decision lightly. Again, I think that any of us here would be worthy chairs. I really do like what Councillor Stratton said. Looking at the structure, finding the key information, identifying problems, examining the government mechanisms, and seeing the impact. But what really stood out from the last statements you said was just we are young, we're new council for some of us. We've only had 2 meetings, and so I am looking forward to finding out more about all of the new councilors and councilors who are returning as well. But what I'm thinking about in terms of chair is that I keep coming back to, I've seen Councilor Loisel do that portion, and I think that we will still, I am certain that between Councilor Stratton, myself, and us here, we will not be derelict of our duties. But what I'm really thinking about is how we move forward as a group. And the chair in these subcommittees doesn't, while we have some power, it's not the same as being council president and whatnot. And so that is why I'm still leaning towards Councilor Loisel, just because of there's a learning curve, and I want us to be able to do the work without having to worry about some hiccups. So while I'm torn, that's kind of where I'm still at. Okay. It's tough.
Any other?
It's tough.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I didn't. I'm sorry. Did you? Oh, she does. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I actually said that we weren't going to. Yeah, sometimes when we're all in person, we might get into a zone where we can just say no hands. But I guess with Zoom, it's a little more complicated.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sorry I'm not there in person.
That's okay.
I mean, there's just one other thing I want to, 2 more things I want to say, which is I'm not used to plugging myself, so I feel a little uncomfortable with that. But yeah, I was president of the board of the Council of Service Agencies of Hampshire County, which is a large board with varying opinions, and I've chaired many other groups that I've been on, community groups that I did in my previous job, and also in the newsroom. And so where you can't get any single opinion in a newsroom. Everybody has their own opinion, and everybody thinks they're right. And So I kind of know how to chair a meeting and pull together everybody's opinion and then try to figure out a course that is kind of like taking the body as a whole. That said, I also feel like it's our duty as counselors to help run an efficient city. And I think that our taxpayers want that too. So I feel like process is important and getting things done is important. And I think we can balance those two things. So.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Stratton.
I mean, I want to be honest that I would be most comfortable with one of the senior counselors chairing as the facilitator of our discussions. I think the work of this committee is so critical, and I'm deeply concerned that we maybe end up rushing through things too quickly without taking the time we need. My ideal would have been one of the senior counselors as chair, but a junior counselor as a vice chair doing a lot of the, the functional behind the scenes work that's needed to unload that task. But I would be much more comfortable with one of the senior counselors as the facilitator of our discussion.
So so I hear that. I think that when possible, we try to delegate, and that's why I kind of started with are you open to feedback to Councilor Loisel? Because the only error is not being able to pivot when things aren't going, smoothly or productively for everyone. So we have a public meeting here. Councilor Loisel has publicly committed to kind of hearing feedback around that balance, and with the acknowledgement that we're all kind of in learning mode. So I hear the concern, but I'm also hearing a commitment to deal with that concern. So I'm comfortable. If no one else has any more comments, we could go to a vote and get on to.
No, good.
Okay. Councilor Loisel, anyone? Councilor Stratton?
No comments. I'm
Okay.
all set.
Okay. So let's go to a roll call because Zoom participant.
Councilor Maori.
Councilor Loisel.
Okay, Councilor Perry.
Counselor Loisel.
Councilor Rizal.
Oh, Councilor Loisel.
Yeah, you have to say.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Laura.
Sorry, I might.
Oh, that's okay.
Councilor Stratton.
Counselor Stratton.
Okay. So that passes for Councilor Loisel. So Councilor Loisel, typically you would start chairing now if that's something you can do from where you're at, and we'll take on. We have just the same process for the vice chair, and then we'll move on to any public comment, and then so forth.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your faith in me. Is there anybody in the room? Just so I know. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. Anyone participating you can see on Zoom.
Okay. So I'm going to, I think I can take prerogative to nominate Councilor Perry as vice chair.
Okay.
Would there be any other nominations for vice chair?
Yeah, okay. Yes. I will nominate Counselor Stratton because that's what I just want to hear. And so I will do that. I do accept, but.
Okay, so we have 2 nominations. I think what we did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can't hear you guys.
Oh, can you hear us now? Or at least
Yeah, now I can.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
That was my bad.
Okay, so we have 2 nominations. What we did last time and what I've seen happen is the people who are nominated speak and then the supporters speak.
Yes.
Or the person who nominated them speaks. Okay, so I would say well, I guess we should say, Councilor Stratton, do you accept that nomination?
I accept. I think my remarks would be largely as before.
Okay. So Councilor Perry?
Yes. Okay. We find ourselves in a weird situation. I was very moved by Councilor Stratton's discussion, his speech for chair. And what was evidence for me was his attention again to detail. I've had the pleasure of meeting with him, and I think we do align on the core value of establishing work here. And I say that while I'm giving praise to him, that the reason why I accepted vice chair is also because of Counselor Stratton and the fear of, not fear, but concern of having a more senior person um, to help rein in this committee. So I will just say that one of the reasons why I did not um, nominate myself or go for chair was because I am trying to be more aware of my workload, and um, it it's a new thing for me. I tend to often say yes to everything. It's why I serve on so many committees and boards, and so I'm trying to just understand what my limits are, seek help. And with that being said, I was moved by the thought of having at least some person who is senior with a newer um, counselor. And I think that I could help with um, leading this body. I did serve as vice chair last term. And, I won't beat the horse about my qualifications, but that is why I'm willing to step up and do that. So.
Thank you. And Councillor Stratton, would you like to speak?
I'm gathering my thoughts here. But, I think one of the questions may be what tasks we wish the vice chair to fulfill. I mean, one thing is to literally be backup chair. Some of the administrative workload, possibly. If we have busy public comment, I understand that means running the timer traditionally, or finding hands on Zoom. I could see a benefit to a coalition of opposites. And to the experience. I also wonder if there are times I'm going to be madly researching something while someone's talking. And I don't know. I'm somewhat curious what the views of my colleagues are on the balance of these roles. And maybe I'll let someone else speak.
Maybe.
Councillor Maori, did you want to say
Yeah,
anything?
I did. And I was going to try to use my virtual hand, which I haven't used in a while because yeah, I hear that. And thank you also for your willingness to serve. And I think that you could do this. And I have 100% faith that Councilor Perry could chair or vice chair here too. I do think that having a senior person as vice chair for Councilor Loisel because she's new would be an asset. And because I'm really hoping this committee can actually communicate with each other. And if you have that, you don't need a unity of opposites. And I frankly do have some concerns about whether that would actually work out very well at this point. So my vote will be for Councilor Perry for vice chair for that reason. But I hope that we will have a very inclusive committee.
Councillor Perry.
So here I am, nominated and a nominator, and as I said before, I feel like I can handle this role. But I did think it was important to just acknowledge Councillor Stratton, his opinions and views. I'm really looking forward to working with him, and I too am wondering what this vice chair position will be. And so, um, what I think, and I can commit myself to, is trying my hardest to make sure that the viewpoints and opinion, the work ethic that Councillor Stratton wants this body to have is something that I'll help facilitate. I think for me as a vice chair, it'd be a little easier to do that, not to have to run it. And I think that the toughest part about subcommittees and even the first vote of council is we don't really have a chance to know one another. I am still in the process of learning everyone's skills. And part of what I do is try and see what parts and people work better together. And so I do think Councilor Stratton could be a great vice chair or a chair. And I kind of wish that we did the vote after the first year, like, after we got a chance to know one another. So again, I did want to just acknowledge the fact that Counselor Stratton, I was moved by your research, your kind of vision for this body, and with that being said, I still am willing and ready to help facilitate whatever makes this body work, as well as the council as a whole.
I'll just speak to why I nominated Counselor Perry. I do feel like it would be good to have a senior member as vice chair because of all the reasons we're talking about. I and I really have a lot of respect for your leadership skills, Counselor Perry. So that and your experience on this specific committee. So those are the reasons I wanted to nominate you. I am a little perplexed by some of the things Counselor Stratton said about a coalition of opposites. I feel like there's some assumptions that you're making about, and we've never actually even had a conversation. So I don't know, why you're assuming that we're opposites. And I think that these subcommittees are typically a bit more collegial and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. So I would hope that you could do that for me. Counselor Stratton.
I think I want to respond to things in the order they were said. I think we are engaging in an experiment, shall we say. And when I see the role of the senior counselors here, I think I am seeing your presence as opposed to a formal title. That your presence as a inspiration to our form of decision is what I will be most looking for. I think there are supporting tasks involved here, just grunt work, that the vice chair may need to help with. And there's certainly there is an implicit power in the things that happen behind the scenes as well. To address my colleagues' comments, I know you mostly through our meetings, and I see that we have come to them with different intentions in terms of the depth with which we are willing to examine things and see them examined. So I hope you will prove me wrong, and I hope that this committee will be a place of discussion, a place of examination, not of wasting time, but of taking the time necessary to the tasks. And we will see how this evolves. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments. Right, Councilor Maori.
Just going to add something.
Council President Maori, sorry.
No, I'm just counselor here, and
okay.
You can also decide if you want to do first. That's the chair's. I mean, we can discuss that. But no, I was just going to say that I think you will be pleasantly surprised. I think there's something about this subcommittee in particular that's very structured and keeps folks focused, and yet doing the deep dive. I find this one kind of more directed in that way, and so I've served on this at least twice, and it's always been the subcommittee to me that is productive and is the most clear about its task, actually. So I think you will be pleasantly surprised, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, I think that we might be ready for a roll call. Laura.
Okay. Counselor Perry.
Counselor Perry.
Okay.
It's always weird.
Counselor Loisel.
I know that feeling.
Counselor Perry.
Counselor Stratton.
Counselor Stratton.
And Counselor Maori.
Counselor Perry.
Okay, there we have it. And the next thing on the agenda is public comment. So is there any public comment? Looks like two city councilors on the meeting, but maybe they came to observe, and nobody has joined the room. So no public comment. Okay. Let me just look at my agenda here. we we just got an email saying we're not going to be looking at the minutes. We'll wait till next time for that, right? Okay, so that's not going to happen. And then the next thing that would come up is the ordinance that the city council referred to this subcommittee. This is going to be my first asking for help situation, which is to say, what I'd like to know is what our goal is here. Are we meant to, at this meeting, consider it and then vote on whether we're going to recommend it to the city council and then send it back to the city council? I mean, I know that there's like, we could send it with a, hold on one second. I'm just finishing my sentence. I know that we could send it back with a positive recommendation, a neutral recommendation, a negative recommendation. I guess what I'm wondering, and this question is for Councilor Maori, when you sent it back to this committee, is the idea for us to send it back to the city council soon?
Yes, that's the idea, is that we would send it back to the next regular meeting. And sometimes,
Okay.
sometimes if there's an information gap that we need to fill and there's time to do so, we won't do that. But generally, that's the assumption.
Okay.
And really just an assumption that we'll deliberate on it, and if, if there's divided votes or anything, that we'll just come with that information as well. So it's not that
Okay.
you have to land 100% anywhere, but you
Okay.
do have to explain that to the full council. So when this item comes up during a full council meeting, we would go to the chair, the chair, and
Okay. Yeah.
and you would just kind of give Councilor Stratton, a
summary.
little summation. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to propose is that we hear from the DPW director who's on the call, who was responsible for submitting this, that we hear from her about why this came about, why she's proposing it. I mean, I'm assuming that we all read the ordinance, we all read the study that underlies it. So how does that sound to everybody for a process? And then we can talk about it.
I think that sounds good. I would then like to present some other materials.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's, I just think we should start with the person who submitted it. Director LaScalia, can you come on here? Welcome to the meeting. Thanks for coming. I wondered if you could, tell us why this came to you, and then, what the process has been so far. I know that it went to the Transportation and Parking Commission. Did it go anywhere else? And just, tell us what you submitted to us in writing.
Hi, Councilor.
mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here and speak about this. So we have a third-party engineering firm who we contract out our traffic engineering to. We have them look at problematic intersections, problematic roadways, and we ask them to do an analysis and then generate a report for us that has recommendations in it. Recommendations are vetted by my department, my team at the DPW. And then we move them through the Transportation and Parking Commission, where we solicit community feedback from residents. We notify the ward councilors so that they have an opportunity to publicize that to constituents who may not be watching, the agendas as they're posted. So we take public comment, and then we make a recommendation at the Transportation and Parking Commission, of which I am the chair and the police chief is the vice chair. And then we move the ordinances to council, where they are referred out to this committee. So that's the process. This committee then gives a positive, neutral, or negative recommendation, and then it goes back to the main council to be voted. So for this particular ordinance, this was part of a group of intersections that I sent to Fuss and O'Neill, again, our third-party engineering firm. They're transportation engineers. They do a lot of work for Mass DOT. They work for multiple municipalities, including Boston, Somerville, Cambridge. They do work all over the state and are very familiar with our city. They do a lot of work for us. So my ask to Fuss and O'Neill, and it is important to note what I asked of them. I asked them to review several intersections and to tell us if some sort of stop control was warranted based on their observations and the data that they collected. So that was the ask. So I just want to be clear what I asked the engineering firm to do, because a lot of times we hear like, well, there should be a roundabout here, or there should be, raised intersections or curb extensions, or, some sort of geometric change. So that was not the request to the engineering firm. The request was, please assess this intersection and make a recommendation, as I just mentioned. So that study took several months to complete. As I mentioned, there were several other intersections that they studied. Those ordinances have made their way through the council. This is one that sort of got caught in between the old council and the new council. So here it is. There was a report generated by Fuss and O'Neill that is posted on our website. This went to the Transportation Parking Commission. There was quite a bit of resident feedback on this intersection. Sometimes it's hard to know what's going to make people show up and come to a meeting, but this was definitely a popular topic of conversation. So after that meeting, I did have a follow-up conversation with Fuss and O'Neill. They did watch the tape of the meeting because I asked them to, the Transportation Parking Commission meeting. And they did generate just a very short follow-up memo at my request to just kind of talk through some of the things that were mentioned at that Transportation Parking Commission meeting. However, what I will note is that when we are talking about the installation of traffic control devices, namely stop signs, as we are in this case, there are warrants, what are called warrants, which are almost like mathematical metrics, if you will, that are listed in the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, also known as the MUTCD, because we like to speak in acronyms. And these are actually federal guidelines that any transportation engineering firm or any engineer would use to determine should some sort of traffic control device be installed in this location. And there's a list of metrics or warrants that any engineering firm would use, like how many crashes are there, at a certain month period, or what are the traffic volumes, or, there's sort of a whole list of them that you can read about. And one of the things that's in there is something called engineering judgment. So anytime we have consulting engineers working for us, they are using the guidelines that are listed in the MUTCD, which include looking at how many accidents we have, what are the turning movements, how many cars do we have, what are the sightline distances, and they are also using their engineering judgment. So understanding, the commentary around this and the public input that we get on a lot of our projects, what happens is because there is some level of subjectivity associated with making these recommendations, what happens is that often people have differing opinions about what should happen in a particular location. Should there be a stop sign here? Should there not be a stop sign here? So I want to just, acknowledge that fact. And I certainly understand that everybody can have a different opinion and that people can look at data and view it differently. My job is to present the data. I hire qualified, competent people who do a lot of work for the city. I present the data to the city council, and the city council votes it. So I'm happy to take whatever questions, but that's kind of a summary and an overview of what my role is here.
Thanks. I have a specific question. Can you say how this particular intersection came to you to be put on the list to be reviewed and evaluated?
Yep, this was a request by residents. So we get a lot of different ways that intersections are flagged for us. So some of it can be like, we see that there's a problem, and some of it can be that the residents in the area see that there's a problem that we may not be aware of. So this was resident request.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to now take a minute to talk process here. What I'm going to propose here is that we councilors ask questions of Director LaScalia, save opinions for later when we deliberate. But for right now, I think it would be good to just put our questions on the table. Can we all agree on that? Okay, so that's great. So questions, Councilor Maori, and then Councilor Stratton.
Yeah, I was just curious about the stop sign, I guess, on Finn. I guess that's northwest. the I'm the third stop sign, because it looks like I don't know if that stop sign is it a pedestrian kind of driven decision to make it a three-way versus a two-way, versus the stop sign coming into town, which I kind of get because I use this almost, several times a day, and I almost always just slow down and act like there is a stop sign there because it's such a strange right of way to turn so abruptly. But I'm just curious about the one going out, away from town. Why a three-way versus a two-way in this situation? And yeah, and maybe some interplay with that, maybe addressing that crosswalk a little bit and that safety of that crosswalk. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Counselor. Counselor Lizelle, do you want me to respond question by question, or do you want to wait until?
Yes, I would think that would make the most sense so we don't forget.
Yeah, so the recommendations in the Fuss and O'Neill report were the installation of an always stop there, and their justification had a few different layers to it. The first is that they were calling out deficient sight lines looking from the existing stop sign. So there's already a stop sign when you're coming off of Prospect and taking a right onto Finn Street to head towards King Street. So there's already a stop sign there. So that's kind of the first place where you have a deficient sight line. The second place that you have a deficient sight line is if you are coming up Finn Street and you're turning onto Prospect Street to go like towards the YMCA. That's the second place you have a deficient sight line. And the reason for that is because there's a very large house on the corner there. So Fuss and O'Neill's justification for this was that you've got two deficient sight lines, and additionally, in their engineering judgment, pedestrian safety in the entire area is poor. I mean, it's just, people are moving quickly. It's kind of a difficult geometric area, and that the installation of an always stop would actually improve the pedestrian experience. That's what the original study said. And that's, nothing has changed. I mean, that is the justification for this. To answer your question, if you were coming from the YMCA and wanting to turn left onto Finn Street, is that your question is why would they want to put a stop sign there? Is that what you were asking?
I'm just going to clarify, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah. So I was actually talking about the one going out towards the Y, the one, because I'm just saying when I come into town, I almost naturally stop there anyway, even though there's not a stop sign. So I kind of intuitively understand the one going to Fenn Street into town, but it's the going out. I was curious, the one where you're kind of taking a right up towards the Y, I guess.
Yeah, it's that big house on the corner.
Yeah, the big house. And I think you've kind of you've kind of answered it with the house being there. Because I was just thinking that, if you have the other two at play, I was just curious if you'd still need the third. But I see what you're saying. And also if you're centering pedestrian, I mean, you might not need the third to see the cars, but you might need the third to promote pedestrian safety. And that's what I was kind of trying to figure out. Thank you.
Councilor Maori, do you have any follow-up questions, or are you good with that? I mean, you can come back and ask questions.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. Councilor Stratton, you want to pose your questions, and I would just again say, please try to hold your opinion because we can talk about that later.
Yes, I have a number of questions, and I hope that we could, ask and answer them one at a time, because I think it would be unmanageable otherwise. So I'm a little, shall I say, dismayed that this follow-up memo has not been shared with this committee, because I think we need to be reading that to inform our decision. And I'm going to have some specific questions about that. But before I get into that in detail, a minute ago, Director, you said there were two deficient sight lines. And I have the report up here, and it shows only one deficient sight line, which is the 114 feet alleged looking northbound, looking northwest. They are saying 114 feet, recommended 390. The other sight line They're saying 420 feet, recommended 335. So I'm wondering how we got from one deficient sight line in the report to now saying two.
So Counselor, I think what might be helpful, just a couple points of clarification. The first is that the follow-up memo that I asked of Fuss and O'Neill is actually not anything different. Nothing has changed. The original recommendations in the report stand. So I just want to be clear about that. It is posted on our website, in the event that someone would like to see it, but there is
Where might I find that?
there is no deficiency or some sort of flawed analysis that needed to be corrected. So I just want to make that clear. I think what might be helpful, and with these engineering studies, there's a lot of data that's presented. There's numbers in the report and queuing distances and so on. I mean, I guess what is difficult for me is to sort of go line by line and say like, well, this number, says this or that number says that. I mean, what can you tell me what your concern is specifically?
Well, I would really like it if you could email me this memo so that I could look at it. I have the website open and I'm not finding it. But my more immediate question was very specific. I'm sorry. The report did not make an argument on the basis of engineering judgment. It made a purely numerical argument in that it said that the intersection sightline distance warrant was not satisfied, the 114 feet versus the required 390. And now you're telling us that there are two versions of the intersection sight list distance that's not satisfied. And you've also said that now there's an argument of engineering judgment, which was not made in the report. So I'm curious where that is coming from in your comments today, other than the report. So I was assuming it was in the memo.
Yeah, so in the original report, there actually is a comment about pedestrian safety. I mean, again, which was part of the ask to Fuss and O'Neill. And the secondary thing to that I would say is when we get an original report back from a consultant, we look at it and we have our own engineering judgment that we sort of superimpose on that. So I just want to be clear about that. I mean, even if warrants are met, even if warrants can be met mathematically, sometimes it actually doesn't make sense to install a stop sign. And that's where your engineering judgment comes into play. So I think that that's just like an important distinction to make, is that your engineering judgment is always the trump card here, even if your warrants are actually met. So I just want to make sure that that I'm explaining that properly, because there are times when we send ordinances that we say we think that this is the right thing to do, and this is based on engineering judgment, even though there's only been one crash here, for example. So if you're maybe taking issue with, a particular warrant not being met, or you think it has not been met, but we're still recommending the installation of the stop sign, I just want to make sure like we're having a constructive conversation.
Well, the only engineering document that I have here to look at is the one from Fuss and O'Neill, and they most specifically do not make an argument of engineering judgment. They make an argument of this one particular warrant, which we need to look at, the actual evidence of. You're telling me that someone has made an argument of engineering judgment, but I have not read that argument. I don't know who the person making this is. I don't have an opportunity to ask questions of them. So I want to know where this argument of engineering judgment is coming from. Could you please email me this memo if that is where it is contained?
So on our website, underneath
I
the
have your website.
original, right, so on our project page where this original memo is contained, underneath of it, there is a follow-up memo, and you can read Fuss and O'Neill's comments.
Okay, your project page is, I'm at the Department of Public Works.
Right, so there's like stop sign studies, I think is what it's called, and underneath of the original
What is the
memo.
main heading for that? Current projects?
Yep, that sounds right.
Okay. Stop sign safety study. Okay. Study memorandum. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so it's been prepared as supplemental documentation, site distance measurements. The site distance for westbound vehicles looking right. Wait, westbound? Who's westbound? I mean, westbound would be Finn. So these are totally different. This is totally different than the previous. These are different numbers than were found before. I really don't understand what's going on here. This is like a completely different.
Right, Counselor, there's the sight lines were measured in two different times of year, right? So you've got different numbers. And that's why I'm saying like I think that getting sort of caught up in the numbers is not a productive way to analyze the data.
Well, this
You
is a
know, if
numeric argument.
right, but it's actually not entirely a numeric argument. Either way, the sight lines are still deficient, whether
Okay,
there's
I'm
leaves
not
on the
seeing the
trees
word
or not.
judgment appear in this memo. Am I missing it?
Can I just interrupt and ask a question related to this? Well, I guess I can. Sorry. Director LaScalia, is the judgment part that you're mentioning implicit in when the engineer, they have the warrants with data and then they issue a recommendation? I guess what I'm wondering is the judgment in that recommendation?
I
Embedded in the recommendation.
Yeah, I understand your question. The engineering judgment piece is actually one of the warrants in the MUTCD. So there's actually a particular warrant that talks about engineering judgment. So my comment on this is that I would say the totality of the recommendation can be based on, either hitting warrant B or it can be based on engineering judgment. So yes, it could be implicit in it. In this case, I understand what Counselor Stratton is saying. He's looking for like a declarative sentence that says, it is our engineering judgment that ... What I would say is that the ordinance has been drafted by my department with my approval. And it has been submitted to the Transportation Parking Commission and then this body. So it is in the DPW's engineering judgment, including that of our subcontractor, that stop signs are warranted here. But I
Who is the
understand the
responsible
Counselor
engineer?
Stratton's looking for like a declarative sentence to that end. This is the declarative sentence.
Who is the responsible engineer asserting engineering judgment?
That would be our third-party engineering firm, Fuss and O'Neill, and there are two principals associated with that engineering firm.
But they have not made that assertion in this memorandum.
They have recommended the installation of an all-way stop.
But what is the basis of their recommendation?
The report.
I mean, they say to mitigate sight distance and pedestrian safety deficiencies. I mean, I think procedurally, I'm very troubled that I have a brand new memo to analyze that was not included in the order, was not submitted to the agenda, was not emailed to council. We're trying to, pick up brand new information in real time, and this information is extremely contradictory of the information we were given before. I mean, these numbers are just drastically different. So I'm very troubled by that, but I want to set that aside for a minute. These calculations of in this term, desired intersection sight distance, these are based on the traffic speeds. What is the applicable speed limit of Prospect Street southbound to this intersection?
I understand your question. The answer to that is that Fuss and O'Neill uses design speeds that are different than the actual posted speed limit. They use design speeds based on observed speeds, meaning speeds that cars are actually driving, not what the speed limit says it is. Because as we know, we put up signs and people don't follow the speed limit. So they are using a 35-mile-an-hour design speed, even though the speed limit drops from 35 to 20.
Do you have any
Um,
more questions, Counselor Stratton?
Yes, I have numerous more questions. So first of all, in the safety study, they said that they got the speed limit from a Mass DOT viewer tool, and it says that the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. I have that tool open. It says that the speed limit is 20 miles an hour. I believe, and I could share my screen, or I can just do this right now, that if I walk back up the map, it's not just immediately there that it's 20 miles an hour. As I believe everyone should know, there is a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign posted. Roughly, I forget what's the street between Perkins and Warfield. I mean, as you approach the intersection, there's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. Yes, they found, speeds in excess of that, which is an issue. But the report is basing the calculated required sight distance on the regulatory speed limit there. And a number they pulled out of a database that doesn't actually have the number in it that they claim they found there. I mean, when I go to that same database, I find 20 miles an hour, and they said they found 35 there. We've also seen two completely different set of measurements here that are just drastically different. So I kind of have very little confidence in these numbers right now, and I haven't seen the basis of this engineering argument. I mean, I
Counselor
would be happy
Stratton,
to entertain
Counselor
an
Stratton.
engineering argument, but I have not seen one said.
Counselor Stratton,
I-
I think you're getting into opinions. I would like you to stick to questions,
Oh.
and we have to have time for other people to ask questions too. So please just continue with your questions.
But
Yes, Counselor Perry.
yeah, I have a point of information.
Point of
I would
order.
actually like Counselor Stratton to share the screen share that exact piece. So I'm not.
Figure that.
I'm trying
Okay.
to focus on you, but I'm also now over here trying to scroll through, and I'm
All right. How do I do this here? Share.
thank you.
I guess I want the. Wait, is that the browser? Sorry, I'm trying to find my web browser here. Can I just do everything? I'm sorry. Why am I? What is the? No, that's not it. No, I just can't figure out which is my browser window. What just popped up? No, that's not the right one. Stop share. Let me see if I can find the right window here.
While he's doing that, Counselor Maori, did you have questions? Or did you want to make a comment about process?
I actually kind of wanted to make a comment about process and offer some kind of a direction for questions, but I can wait.
Sure, okay.
Okay, well, yeah, so why don't I just do that? I was just going to kind of say a process thought I'm having is I see that we may have a different idea about what our job is here, our task is. And I want, I think it's having supporting documents, that's important. But I think as counsel, and you have an engineering background, and Counselor Stratton, and that's great. I have a public health background. I certainly look at things through that lens if that's a subject matter. But when does that kind of go into micromanaging? Because to me, it's less about, what this number looks like and that number looks like in the report versus what you have already said, which is what is the problem we're trying to solve? And is this the solution? And I think for me, the questions the more helpful framing would be, what are the pros and cons of this, of putting the stop signs in? And, what is the feedback from residents? What are their concerns? And can we address them? And not so much trying to go through with our city staff and really get in the weeds with their reports in terms of course, if there's huge substantive issues, but I mean, we don't, it's going to, to make the efficient city business, I think we really need to, to focus on the questions that impact our residents and not, debating where that line is between, doing our due diligence and then starting to kind of get into micromanaging and in the weeds, because I understand this is a subject that you're familiar with, but I think the more compelling questions is, we're spending a lot of time on this, and I think we have much more compelling questions.
Okay, so I get that. Thank you for that insight. And I would again just say, there's questions, there's opinion. And for right now, I think that if you have a question, Councilor Stratton, you ask it, and then DPW director answers it, and then we go on to the next question.
I have
Okay.
another point of information.
Yes.
So Councilor Stratton, I'm looking at your screen share, correct?
Yes.
Which is the posted speed limit for Prospect is 20.
And
Correct.
that's true all the way up from, I think, Perkins.
Yeah.
And Perkins is also incidentally about the required sight distance. Perkins is just over 400 feet in the requested. If the speed limit were, if the speed limit of the calculation, shall we say, were 35 miles an hour, then the sight distance would be 390 feet that you need.
And so my point of information is I believe that Director Lascalia said that they were actually looking at the observed speeds.
That may be true in the memo. The report that this is formally based on, I mean, the only information we had before today was based on the posted speed limit. And they said that the tool that I'm looking at right now says that the speed limit is 35. But as we can see, it actually says that it's 20.
And still, I'm still in the point of information. Sorry, I do not want to get back and forth, but I'm looking at the report, and it looks like in 2.12, table 1, site distance measurements, it says observed speed 35 miles per hour. Am I?
Yes, I mean, and I with respect that this might be a little too discussion-y for the moment. I mean, the argument we were given is based on a faulty report of the applicable speed limit. It then says, the observed traffic speed, and that would raise a question. Do you base this on what it should be or what it is? However, I will also point out.
Okay.
Sorry,
I think I would get
later.
it.
We'll address this later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want you to say it's a faulty report. Okay. It's a report.
Could we have the factual basis of it then? Because it says 35, and where it says they found 35, I'm seeing 20. And
I think Director Lascalia answered that when she said it's what they observe. And that makes sense.
I would like to switch my screen share to the report itself then. Come on.
Use time for later. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'll do it later.
Where is this in here? A posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour was listed for both roadways in the Mass DOT road inventory viewer. That's where we just were, and it actually says 20.
Okay. So, but lower down, can you go down? I saw in the grid that it said observed speed limit is 35 miles per hour.
That might be in the memo.
So.
Oh, no, sorry. Yes, it does say there. I mean.
So wait. Director Lascalia, is there a discrepancy between this online document that Councilor Stratton found and this report?
No, Counselor, there is no discrepancy. The Mass GIS viewer is correct. And Fuss and O'Neill's comment is actually just background information. It's not meant to be the basis for some commentary around a sightline distance based on an incorrect. Like, I understand, Councilor Stratton, what you're saying. I mean, you're trying to sort of, I guess, discredit their report because maybe you don't agree with the installation of the stop sign. I think
that is incorrect.
I mean, I think that, the 35 miles an hour is an observed speed limit. And the speed limit actually does drop a few blocks before the corner, but cars are continuing through the corridor in that speed. Do I wish Fuss had written, another sentence in here to clarify? Yes, but that doesn't mean that there is some data discrepancy. Fuss has explained their rationale, and the way that they analyze stopping distances is based on observed speeds, and they typically always add at least 5 miles an hour to what the actual posted speed limit is. So I don't know if those
So you're
comments
saying, so
help
you're saying that,
clarify.
so my understanding is that the speed limit before you get closer to the intersection is 35 and then it drops.
It drops to
And that,
20. Yeah, it drops
okay,
to 20.
okay.
So if I might return to what's on the screen share, I mean, are you saying that this sentence in the report is not defective? Because they are saying that this online tool that we were just in says it's 35, but we just looked there and it says it's 20.
Right, Counselor, but cars are approaching the intersection going 35 miles
Yes,
an hour.
they have stated the observed speed, but I'm concerned about the factual accuracy of the report here. I mean, I'm not making an opinion on the stop sign. I'm talking about the process here. We have a report which makes an evidentiary claim which is not supported by the source that it claims to reference.
It sounds to me like you're saying that the source that it's that source that you showed us said 20 miles per hour.
And that's the source the claim that the report
But do you
claims they looked
understand
at.
but do you understand there's a difference between approaching the stop sign, I mean, approaching the intersection and then being in the intersection, that it drops down?
That distance is outside the required sight distance for even if the 35 were true.
Okay.
I mean, people have asked about what our process here is, what are we doing? And I think one of the biggest questions is, let's set aside whether it's the case or not. If there were an error, a procedural mistake in materials we were given, where in the public process of this city would that be uncovered? And I would say that it would be right here in this room between ourselves and the public.
Councilor Maori, did you want
Well,
to?
yeah, I'm trying to stick to our rule of questions, and I guess maybe this is a point of clarification or information, but you did bring it up, and the director responded to it. So what I'm saying is the report isn't bringing this ordinance forward. The director is. And so the director takes all this information. This is one tool. And now this is the time in which she's explaining how she came to this conclusion and is presenting this ordinance. So to me, it feels like you are hyper focusing on a report when that is one tool, and we're hearing, she doesn't need this report to bring this ordinance. She needs a report, but she can come here and explain what you're saying, and I feel like that's what she's done. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think what you're craving, we have done, and I would like to move, personally, I'd like to get to the bigger questions about the pros and cons and the impact to the community, and because the report isn't who brought us this ordinance, and the person who brought the ordinance is here.
Well,
and
yeah,
has
that's
a
helpful.
comprehensive view.
Speak to that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a process for stop signs, okay, which is that one of the numeric warrants is satisfied or an argument of engineering judgment is made. I would be perfectly happy to entertain an argument of engineering judgment, but we have been brought only a claim that a numeric warrant is not satisfied. I mean, the warrant is satisfied in the sense that the sight distance is inaccurate. So I'm trying to verify the information upon which this was based. It is an open question. A question we could check into, is the sight distance calculated on the observed speed or on the speed that people should be going? The speed they are or the speed they should be going. I am concerned that we have a factual inaccuracy in the report of literally what it says. I mean, it could be a clerical error, but it is a factual inaccuracy of the report, and I think people are hesitant to acknowledge that the report is actually wrong in this sentence because it says that this tool says 35 miles an hour, and actually it says 20.
Okay.
And I mean, Then then there's the question of what is the sight distance looking north from that stop sign? I've been there multiple times. I've been there today. To put some numbers on it, Warfield Place is a little over the 114 feet, which was the original claim. I mean, where Warfield Place comes out, they're saying you can't even see to that, which you obviously can. The required distance would be, could you see to Perkins? And this gets into the question of, where are you looking for? So the calculations in this are based on the idea that you are looking from the current position of the stop bar. Now, the reality is everybody stops beyond that. They look in a place where they can see far, far more. I'm sorry, I should be sticking to questions. There was a question, there was an argument in here about pedestrian safety. Have there been any pedestrian collisions at this intersection in the last 25 years?
I don't know about 25 years, but there have not been any recently.
And we have great online state data for this, and it's something I hope I can sort of walk this committee through in the future. So I looked in state data goes back to the year 2000.
Okay, wait. No, do you have any more questions? You can say this later.
So have you read the letter from retired city engineer David Valletta, which was sent to the whole council and also to the DPW?
I think that's a question for you.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes, I've read it.
Any conclusions or response?
I think that a lot of members of the public have comments about our projects. And I think he had comments about, the proposed stop sign.
I feel, well, I'm sorry. My recollection, and I'll bring it up here, is that he made some fairly specific requests about the clarification that was needed in the engineering study.
Counselor, again, a lot of people, have comments about our projects. And we listen to everybody's comments. But ultimately, we have to make decisions around what we think is the right way to move forward. So I think that, sort of belaboring reports or, moving through the details of something like this, is not necessarily constructive. The bottom line is it is our opinion that always stop is warranted here, and that's why the ordinance is here.
Okay. Counselor Stratton, I don't think you should be sharing that. We don't need that. We all read it. So do you have any more questions? One or two more questions? If not, I want to move on to other questions. Can you stop sharing your screen?
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Ruling. Uh-oh, left too long.
You appeal the ruling of what?
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Which ruling? I don't know what
That I stopped sharing my screen, although
Okay.
I've done so.
Okay. What do we do about that?
Well, was
We take a vote. No, actually, sorry. Someone would have to second it.
First of all, why is there an echo suddenly?
Because I got a request to unmute, which I unwisely clicked on.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So I felt like we don't need to see that letter. We got that letter, and I don't think you need to share it. And if you have any more questions, I'd like you to ask them. And then I'd like to see if Council Perry has any questions. And then we can hear your opinion.
Okay. I guess my final question is David Valletta just anybody, or is he a registered civil engineer, which is not a credential which would apply to anyone in this conversation at this moment?
I think he's just anybody. He's just a resident, like any other resident.
So a registered professional engineer in civil engineering is just anybody.
We are not in the business of going to find our own registered engineers. That's not our scope. Any more questions? Okay, Councilor
I'm
Perry,
sorry.
do you have any?
Oh, sorry.
What?
That was, no.
Not at this moment.
Okay.
I was just going to make a point of clarification, and maybe, maybe I should stop doing those, just because we're in learning mode. That wasn't a ruling of the chair. That's kind of a process. That's not something that we would vote to appeal. If, she had made an actual ruling, that's something we would vote on an appeal or get a second. But that's a procedural thing, and the chair has kind of the right to do that without an appeal.
So your hand is up, Councilor Stratton. Is that from before?
Yes.
Okay. So if everybody's asked their questions, I guess what I think is, and maybe it's time to, well, let me just say, Director LaScalia, do you have any other points you need to make after these questions were raised?
No, Counselor, thank you.
Okay. And then I have a question, which is, and I feel like I should know the answer, but I don't, so I'm going to ask the question. Can the DPW director or the Department of Public Works bring an ordinance for a new stop sign without getting an engineering study?
We can, Counselor. I don't typically do that for exactly this reason, because I want a third-party engineer to look at this and make a recommendation to us.
Okay, but it's allowed to do that. So you got a third-party engineer as is your practice,
Right.
and this is their recommendation, and then you independently, your department independently decides whether you think that is sufficient to have this ordinance, right?
We do, that's correct.
Okay. So at this point, I think, we could talk about the merits, and then I think we vote. And if anybody is not sold that this is a proper thing to do, you vote no. That's kind of what it is. We don't badger someone with minute questions about their data. So let's have a conversation. Or unless, Councilor Perry, you have your hand raised and maybe you have questions.
I do have just a quick one, and it's more again for Director LaScalia as implementation. So with these stop signs, would it be similar to how we did the ones on State Street that just came in with the barricades and a police presence and all of that? Pardon me if you've already discussed this, but just for my clarification.
Yes, that's, I think, the safest way to go about implementing these stop signs, especially in busy corridors. So that's what we plan to do. I'd probably want to wait until the snow's off the ground, just so I don't have any obstructions in the middle of the roadway. But based on the schedule, it looks like that's how it would go.
So are we in agreement about the process here? We now talk about it and then we'll vote?
I still have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'd forgotten this one earlier. Director, there's information on the city's webpage about what we use stop signs for and what we don't use stop signs for. Do we use stop signs for traffic calming or to moderate traffic speeds?
No, that is not why we would install a stop sign. I wouldn't say, well, they're speeding on Ryan Road, so let me just drop a stop sign in here. That's actually in conflict with the intent of a stop sign. Stop sign is used for intersection control and to make intersections safer.
Okay. Councilor Maori, did you have questions or did you want to comment?
I had a question from before, and unless during the deliberation we can also ask questions, I thought I would just repeat it, which is I wanted to hear from the director a little bit. I've heard these from watching the meetings and from our full council meeting, but just the kind of the feedback from I've heard concerns from the residents, and obviously with safety sometimes. You weigh concerns with, safety concerns, but the concerns of the residents that have come up and kind of to speak to those or address those. I know there's some fear that the traffic's going to back up. I mean, sometimes people have fears, sometimes they're based in reality, and sometimes they're fears. And so anyway, just from what you've gathered, I really want to assess for the public if this is the right move for our, for our city. So if you could speak more broadly about concerns and pros and cons that have come up, and, maybe, that crosswalk, how to make it safer. We've heard that too. Just before we start deliberating, that would help me deliberate. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure, Counselor. I mean, one of the reasons I actually went back to Fuss and O'Neill after that TPC meeting is because I just wanted to confirm with them that I wasn't going to have what are often referred to as queuing problems. This is actually something that Fuss and O'Neill had thought about or had contemplated while they wrote the report. And I just want to be clear about this report. Every detail isn't necessarily in the report. They're writing us like an executive summary, and they're not necessarily sharing like the minutia of their calculations. But one of the reasons I went back to them and they wrote the supplemental memo is because I just wanted them to put in writing for me a queuing analysis. We ran into this when we were at Hatfield and Cook. If folks remember the implementation of that four-way stop, we were actually concerned that we were going to have queuing problems there, meaning that we were going to have cars starting to stack up during peak hours. So I actually did ask Fuss to come back and just kind of write a brief summary for me and tell me, do you see this as a problem? Do you not see this as a problem? And they do not see queuing as a problem. So I'm concerned with the cars coming off of King Street, up Finn, and then trying to make their way up Prospect to the YMCA or in that direction. And I don't want to see cars starting to stack up there because that actually doesn't make the experience safer for anybody. So we want to make sure we don't have unanticipated consequences. So that's one of the things that we do not believe is going to be a factor. They do not believe is going to be a factor. They actually shared their capacity analysis worksheets with us, which is just, sort of calculations of, what time of day it is and how many cars do we think we have running through here and how long does it take them to clear the intersection. So that's a piece of it. The other thing I just want to mention, and I said this in my initial comments, which it's very important to understand what I asked them to do. And I think this intersection, if we had infinite resources, is actually a good candidate for some level of geometric reconfiguration. And I think that some improvements could be made by moving curb lines around or, potentially, slightly elevating crosswalks or putting some sort of, enhanced RFBs in here, with flashing lights for pedestrians. But we don't have those infinite resources. So I just think it's important to note like what specifically I am asking the engineering firm to do, because I think people are often frustrated with the outcome because there's other opportunity to make improvements that we can't necessarily have the funding to implement. So I just want to mention those couple of things. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but hopefully that's helpful comments.
Could you just,
It is. Thank you.
I think, could you sum up the gist of the comments, the public comments against and for? And I'm talking like 2 sentences, like at the TPC meeting.
I would encourage folks to watch the tape of that meeting. I think that there were some people who felt that it was a dangerous area for pedestrians to cross. I think anyone who's crossed there would have that experience, myself included. I walk through there frequently. So I think that there was some commentary from pedestrians in the area who felt like this would be an improvement. I think that there were a lot of comments about drivers who felt that this would not be something that they wanted to see for varying reasons. And, I always hesitate to speak for others. So again, I encourage people to watch the tape, but there were a lot of folks who felt like, this would be a driving meaning a vehicular inconvenience for whatever reason.
No, that's helpful. And and we also heard the comments at the public comment at the city council meeting. So we got a variety there too. Did your question get answered, Councilor Maori?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And Councilor Stratton, did you say you had one more question? Oh, you're muted. Or I can't hear you. I don't know.
Sorry, I hit the wrong thing. I'm looking at the new document, and I am still not seeing, there's two pictures in there of sight distances, but there's nothing really about the critical one, north looking northwest, that was previously alleged to be 114 feet. There's a view to the right looking down Finn Street, but it's mostly obstructed by the A-pillar of the car, and parts of your car are not included in the sight distance warrant. I mean, you move your head if you need to see that. If you go there in person, I think you can see over the fence. So I'm not sure that picture is what am I saying? I would like a picture that better demonstrated the concern. There's also a picture of
Wait, is there a question
yes,
here?
there is.
Okay.
There is a picture of a sight distance if you're on Finn Street and you're looking right towards Prospect. I'm not understanding why that sight distance even matters, because you're basically looking downstream of where you are. I don't know who would you hit. I mean, you can the crosswalk is right there in front of you. You can see that beautifully. I'm not sure what that sight distance has to do with this analysis at all.
Is this a question you can address, Director LaScalia?
It is, and the answer to that question is if you were coming up Finn Street with King Street behind you and you wanted to make a left-hand turn movement onto Prospect, so turning in the direction of the existing stop sign on Prospect, that's where your sightline distance to the right would matter, because a car would be coming from the YMCA and you wouldn't necessarily be able to see it if you're trying to make that left-hand turn movement. And by the way, those left-hand turn movements aren't common, but they do happen.
I see your point. If I could extend the question, if you are, in essence, you are making a left turn in traffic, what is the position at which someone is required to stop when they're making a left turn? Is it specified? I mean, the picture is taken from before the crosswalk. Is there a reason that we would expect that someone who is making a left turn after verifying there was no pedestrian in the crosswalk, is there a reason we would expect that they were making their judgment before the crosswalk rather than where they could see?
I mean, I can't speak to where, some other driver would stop. I mean, my comment on this is that you sort of move through that crosswalk and now you're kind of nosing into that intersection where people are actually cutting that left-hand turn a little bit sharp because they're moving quickly through that intersection. And now the nose of your car is actually into that intersection. So I think that left turn movement is something that we internally at DPW flagged as though it's not like hugely common. It's not like it happens 1,000 times a day or something, but that's a tricky turning movement to make there.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question. And I'm just aware of the time, and I want to say, are we ready to discuss the merits and then vote? Counselors?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes. I would move an information request, which is a power of the council under section 2.7 of the charter, which is extended to committees. And I would specifically move the information request for documentation of the site distances in the memo, or alternately a written explanation, a written argument of engineering judgment that is signed by a responsible engineer.
Is there a second to that? Okay. So at this point, let's talk about the ordinance, keep our comments related to the ordinance. Anybody want to start? Councilor Perry?
Before I get into that, I just have a question. Is that for your information request? Could you just say it again?
Yes,
There's a lot of things in
it
there,
would
and
be basically either that we brought documentation of these site distances, particularly the critical one. If you're at the existing stop sign and you're looking up Prospect Street and it is a very little bit of a left turn, that we be brought documentation of what the site distance there actually is. How far can you see? I would assert that you can see to Perkins, that if there is a car At Perkins, you can see part of it.
Okay.
And I would like confirmation of what you actually can see.
Okay, enough
Or
there. Enough.
I'm
Counselor
no,
Stratton.
explaining my motion.
No.
I was asked.
You still go.
Or alternately, that we be brought a written argument of engineering judgment as distinct from a warrant, that this is just a proposal on basis of engineering judgment that is signed by a named responsible engineer.
Okay. I just
Okay.
needed that.
Do we have a second on that?
No, I was just asking for clarification because there was a lot of
Okay.
information.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I was hearing and understanding that right.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so at this point, does anybody want to talk about the ordinance? Counselor Stratton?
Okay, so going back to what I was saying while we were organizing about identifying the problem, I'd like to discuss what the problem is. I will give my view of the problem, and I'm curious what other people think. And my view of the problem is that people feel unsafe. People perceive this as a dangerous intersection. What's interesting when I go and I look is I find that the state data goes back to the year 2000. There have not been any reported pedestrian crashes at this intersection. I can go a few blocks up the street to Stoddard and I find one pedestrian crash. I can go either side of the Ryan Road School on Ryan Road and I find one pedestrian crash at each of those intersections. I also find some bike crashes at those intersections. You can go all over the city and you can find intersections that in the last 26 years have had 1, 2, 3 pedestrian crashes. This intersection has never had one. It's perceived as dangerous, but we have no evidence that it is. And so I'm wondering, is the problem we're trying to solve a danger? And it has had relatively few car crashes. Or is it that we're trying to solve our constituents' concern?
Oh.
Which to me raises the question of what is the appropriate solution?
Okay, Counselor Perry?
Yes, I think that it is. It's good to look at what the real problem is. And what I will say to your question is, if people perceive it as dangerous, that means they're less likely to utilize it and use it. So part of that, when you're looking at data, is some people might just avoid that altogether. And so then you are taking away, there are people who probably would like to use that, but feel like it's so dangerous, they choose to use another route. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I actually used to live right there. Before I bought a home in Ward 6. And I did have a scare there one day, but it was not of the sort that happens here. Someone was coming west up Finn, and they were going straight into the sun, and I didn't realize it, but they hadn't seen me. And after that, I decided to actually cross mid-block, even though it's not legal, because then I could see the cars on both sides of me. Why is the crosswalk where it is? Well, it does continue the trip down Prospect Street. My sense is that most of the people who were asking for this are not on the Smith College end of Prospect Street. Sorry, I'm speaking geometrically approximately. They're actually like coming from Finn or Aldrich or something, and they're trying to go up to Perkins. I guess the school bus stop is up by Perkins or something. So it's not actually a given that this is the best place for them to even be crossing. It is the place that is currently established for crossing, but it's not necessarily the best choice. And certainly we don't want people's pedestrian mobility to be confined by fear. This resonates with me deeply. But one of the things we sometimes do, particularly in the bike world, is, you say, well, that's a 1/10 of a mile shorter, but this is such a nicer route. So, being forced into an undesired alternate route, that's bad. But sometimes there are alternate routes that are just better. I mean, one thing works in a car and you do a different thing outside of a car.
Okay, Counselor Perry?
Sorry, this is not, I promise you, not going to be back and forth, but I do remember when the stop light came in on State, and a lot of concern was people coming around and going through. Was that Aldrich over there? What street is?
Aldrich is the next one up. That's State and North State, which is just kind of its own thing, and then Finn is the main street.
Yeah, but people, if I am correct, I remember there was a concern that people would, instead of going to that stop, light would then take Aldrich, and there are kids there. There's a lot of talk about this, and I remember, I think actually Councilor Robbins had brought that forward. And so when I'm thinking about that intersection, and we had a lot of discussion from people who were kids trying to use it for school or transporting, there, no disrespect, but there's a difference between an adult who is who understands kind of the safety rules of the road, and then some kids who maybe want to cross or use that thing too. And so when I'm thinking about what's going to be the safest for everyone, there's always going to be people who are on your outsides, but I'm looking at what is the best for the most amount of people. So for me, and I agree, I think it's a dangerous intersection in general. I often use that road, and as Councilor Maori said, people sometimes just assume there's a stop sign there, and that lack of clarity, I think, maybe you or myself know that you can go through it, but what we're really trying to solve is that lack of clarity, which helps with safety. That's what I am thinking.
So do you want to say where you stand on this ordinance, or are you still thinking?
I mean, I haven't heard from Councilman Maori. I'm going to wait. I mean, I know where I'm standing.
Okay. Okay.
But
okay. I just didn't know if you were getting to, Councilor Maori, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah. So I've heard, that's a really good point about the kind of the hesitation factor. It's usually innocuous, but maybe if there, maybe you get a collision because someone's stopping and there's no stop sign, so the person behind them doesn't have that cue. So that's a great point I hadn't thought of. But yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is like, and I wonder how much this is part of it, because I'm curious kind of about what the kind of downside to you, Councilor Stratton, besides the disagreement about the report, because is this the ideal if we were just going to look at this intersection and look at safety? What would we do differently? And I think we would do things differently if we had, a very large budget. We might move the crosswalk, we might raise the, there's lots of things. So I'm hearing that it's not ideal, that the approach to making this safer isn't what we would just kind of start from scratch and do. We're dealing with the reality that this is how the road bends, and this is where the crosswalk is. And I'm so, I think I would always err on the side of safety. I'll always err on the side of safety, and I don't really want to wait for a pedestrian to be injured or killed. So I guess I'm wondering about what you see as the cons to trying this out, because first of all, if for some reason it's really not working, we can come back and change it. And some, and yeah, I guess I'm wondering what the downside is to, given all that, in front of us.
Okay. So I would like, yeah, but I just wanted to comment too, and maybe you might have something to say about what I have to say. So I thought, it might just, what?
Oh, nothing. I'm sorry.
So I guess I have, I was kind of persuaded by the comments at the public comment, and, particularly the young man who spoke and said he feels unsafe, and several people who live in the neighborhood said they feel unsafe. And, but I also heard people at the public comment say, this isn't the best way to, make people safer, that certain traffic calming is better than that. But I also know that, putting up a stop sign is much easier and less expensive than traffic calming. And also the process by which we do traffic calming takes so much time. So I feel like it's sort of an imperfect fix to a complicated problem. And so that's kind of where I stand on it. So I just wanted to say that before you spoke, Councilor Stratton, in case you wanted to respond to that too.
Yes. So I think one of the things that's very important to remember is that stop signs are not traffic calming. It's right there on our website. I asked the director, that's not what stop signs are for. Stop signs are for intersection control. They're not traffic calming. They're not speed control. Why don't we want to have too many stop signs? It's an unfortunate fact of human reality that if you put in too many stop signs, they lose their meaning. My mother happens to live in a wonderful little village, and it has a road along the top of a hilltop, and it has all these cross streets. And the if you will, the 3 road has a stop sign at every cross street. And you better believe people do not. I mean, struggling myself to comply with all of these, because it's just there's a stop sign every 200 feet or something as you go this quarter mile. And that is why we don't just have a salt shaker full of stop signs and sprinkle them all over the city. And we have a process for this. We don't just place stop signs politically, really. This is an engineering process. I mean, there's warrants, or there is a very reasoned engineering argument. It is not supposed to be a political process. I mean, we had the stop signs last fall that were on State Street, and they were near the mayor's house, and the internet blew up. Oh, we gave the mayor a stop sign. I mean, if you look at that argument, it doesn't make any sense, actually. Not only does it not advantage the mayor's trip, but there was data supporting that stop sign. So, I could say, hey, we followed the rules. We put this stop sign in accordance with our principles. What I sort of hear the desire here to do is to achieve traffic calming by the ready means. Let's go to the store and buy a stop sign. But again, that's not what stop signs are for. In terms of the intersection data, 26 years is a very large sample size. I mean, I can look all over the city and I can find intersections that have had 1, 2, 3 pedestrian crashes that we don't consider dangerous. I think that's the real distinction. These are places we don't consider them dangerous, but people have gotten hit. Whereas this, we perceptively consider it dangerous, but no one's gotten hit. So I sort of feel like we're on a momentum of doing what is seen as the right thing for the wrong reason. And by the wrong reason, I mean that there's this nebulous argument being made of engineering judgment that doesn't have anyone's name on it. I mean, when an engineer writes something, I mean, I'm not this kind of engineer. I have engineering training. I am not a registered professional engineer. Nor is the director. When someone who puts their name on something, that is a professional stand they're taking. And I have not seen this argument of engineering judgment, named and signed. It's implied, but it hasn't been given to us. The argument that has been given to us under the name of an engineering firm is the site warrant distances, but I haven't seen these substantiated. I mean, I've been out there, I've looked, I've taken pictures, and I come to a different conclusion. So, I understand the public is very passionate about this and they want to do something. But in the question of, is this the thing we should do? Have we followed our process? Do we have either a numeric argument that we have confidence in, an algorithmic, a non-subjective argument? Or do we have the subjective argument of engineering judgment that has actually been stated by an engineer?
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Perry or Councilor Maori, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to add that ultimately we have the judgment of the director who's holding all sorts of things. She's holding experience in the community, experience, I know for a fact that the director is very aware of the too many sign problem because I've asked for signs and been told there's too many signs there. No one's going to read that. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But so I guess what I'm hearing that, and I think we just come to different conclusions. I appreciate you explaining that. And that, that's something that, I think we land in different places, but I appreciate you explaining what you think the con is. But to me, part of, your argument is that this numeric versus engineer, and I'm saying, but there is a person who's in charge of all of this and has experience with those. And it's not that I'm not saying that the director is going to be 100% right all the time, but we've been going back and forth, and I feel satisfied in her judgment call on this. And that's more important to me than the sources that you are referring to.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Maori. Director Lasai, I see that you have your hand up. I just wanted to make a comment that I am not seeing this as a traffic calming measure. I'm seeing it as a safety issue. So what my comment about that was referring to people who want there to be some reconfiguration there and traffic calming. I don't see it that way though. So I see it as a safety issue. Director LaScalia, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we have a report from professional engineers that are recommending the installation of a stop sign here. So to Councilor Stratton's point, the professional engineers working for us have actually recommended that a stop sign be installed. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
And their names are on it, you're saying?
They are, yes. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
they're professional engineers and they have made that recommendation.
Thank you. Councilor Perry, did you want to say anything more?
Actually, you pretty much said what I was going to say, that I also did not see this as traffic calming, but more about intersection safety. And just because a place does not, as a data point, doesn't have any injuries or accidents, still does not, for me, mean that it's safe. You know, I've learned in life, you're just one accident away from injury. You know, like one small mistake can change a life. So, you know, that's what.
So I'm wondering if we might be ready to vote. And I guess what we have to do is Councilor Perry, you wanted to finish?
No, Councilor Stratton.
Oh, okay, Councilor Stratton.
In response to the director's comment, we have a report and we have a memo. They give two different sets of numbers, neither of which have been substantiated. And the only argument that's made in those reports is not a judgment argument. It is a numeric argument.
Okay, at this point, you're repeating things you've already said, and I feel like we need to move on. You said.
I feel like the director has alleged an engineering argument which has not been stated anywhere.
I think it's evident in their recommendation.
I would contest that those are not the words on the page.
All right.
Okay, so at this point, yes, Councilor Perry, you have a suggestion?
I would like to make a motion for a positive recommendation.
Second.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion. Now we have to comment on the motion? Or do we vote on it?
A point of information, we can have more discussion, but we do not have to. We can.
Okay.
That's a.
Okay. I think that I feel ready to vote, but and we could also have in the spirit of responding to what Councilor Stratton said in the beginning, I'm assuming we might not agree, and we might. But that there could be a minority report or something. Do you ever do that?
We usually do that for split votes. Certainly, in a full council meeting, Councilor Stratton, you could do that. Councilor Stratton would raise their hand and chime in.
So
when we discuss it and deliberate it in full council.
Okay, sounds good. So we should just vote then.
Could I make just incidental to the vote? Could I make I'm not going to call it a motion, but a request, which is that our report of this to the council be inclusive of the following items. The original report, the original Fuss and O'Neill report, the Fuss and O'Neill memo.
Wait. Yeah. I think we can talk about that after. No, well, I'm happy to hear about.
Please finish speaking.
No, because I want, because I think
latest letter.
Councilor Stratton, I really want to hear.
Vote on it.
I really want to hear what you have to say, but I want us to vote now, and then we can talk about what we're going to do, what we're going to give to the council. Okay, I don't think that's the time to have that conversation. So let's have a roll call vote on the motion on the floor. Did it get seconded? Yes, it did. It was Councilor Perry made the motion, Councilor Maori seconded it. So now let's have a roll call vote on making a positive recommendation, and then we'll talk about what we want to send along with it.
Councilor Loisel?
Yes.
Councilor Stratton?
No.
Councilor Maori?
Yes.
And Councilor Perry?
Yes.
Okay. So we got through that. Yes, Councilor Perry?
I kind of want to, Councilor Stratton's, I would say like a friendly amendment is what you were going for. And I kind of want to talk about that. And sort of what I've learned from this process here, and I think will help us moving forward, is that, again, we're a lot of new counselors. And I think some of the information you were seeking could have been asked of Director Lascalia outside of this meeting, because to save us time. But also, you had good questions. You had some discrepancies that you wanted to pull out, and granted, I did watch in real time that we saw the memorandum there. But I think in the future, one of the things that is useful for our city councilors is our ability to ask for more information. We all have different lenses, as Councilor Maori said, that we take this from, and it would be helpful if you're looking at some minute details that I wasn't looking for, but I know that if you ask the questions, you would then bring it forward here to me and be like, I noticed this thing. This is some things I had, and I think that would be more comfortable to me than kind of this tendency. I'm not speaking directly to you, but I've noticed that there is this kind of movement towards these gotcha moments where we bring in someone and you're trying to stump someone with the question. I believe that it's, for me, more, it just works better if we are allowing our directors, our speakers, to have some of the questions, that need a little more minute details before they get here in the quote unquote hot seat or whatever. And so I think that I would just hope we can do that in the future, because that'll give you or whoever's asking or requesting that information a chance to process the response, so you can look at it. Because I watched as you were trying to figure out in real time, and I was here in real time trying to figure it out. So for me, that would be just a process note. And then back to your request, I think, when we put this forward to the full council, I would support having all of that documentation there, for other councilors to look at.
So if I could sort of speak to that in reverse
No,
order
wait,
there.
wait. I was just going to say something. My question process is typically when you're sending something to the council, what do you send? I assume it's the ordinance and the study that was attached to the ordinance. What else would you send? People who have been on this committee before.
Usually the chair verbally just kind of does a summation.
Oh, okay.
And if full council, if anyone and other councilors have desires for it, they can certainly ask before that meeting, like they would anything that would be on the agenda, or they can ask during the meeting.
Okay. So in addition to the ordinance itself and the study, what would you want to include, Councilor Stratton?
So actually the study was not included on the last council agenda, and I really thought it should be. So definitely the order was included, and there was a little picture with the 3 stop signs, but the Fuss and O'Neill study was not included. So I'm hoping that when someone is looking at the council agenda, they will be able to click on, the order, the Fuss and O'Neill study, the follow-up memo, and I would really like them to have David Valleda's letter too.
Okay. That's where I would disagree, because people have opinions all the time.
Point of clarification, that's a decision of the council president, not what gets
Okay.
attached to the agenda. That's not a chair decision. You can certainly,
Oh, okay, great.
you could recommend it to me, but that's not a decision we make here.
Okay, great. All right, good.
I had been hoping that would be a recommendation of this committee, and I respect the control of the agenda. To speak to the other question, I actually don't, I think we're all trying to bring information here, and in terms of the gotcha, I think actually the gotcha was that I just discovered this memo just now that had not been included. I think some of the questions that I spoke to, some of the things that retired city engineer David Valleda included in his letters, these were questions that were raised in transportation and parking last fall. And were not really addressed there. And the comment was that, well, we can get into this when it comes to legislative matters. I know that the director is also very busy managing our snow response. In terms of requesting information, I have some outstanding queries with the DPW that have not been responded to, and we were on a fairly short timeline from agenda to here. So I was not meaning to play gotcha in the meeting. I was meaning to, identify specifically who is making this statement, on what basis is it being made, establish the chain of engineering evidence, if I could call it that, to borrow words from multiple domains and smash them together. But, you know, I hope that we will work well with information in this committee.
Okay, so I think, thank you for clarifying who decides what goes on the agenda, Councilor Maori. I'm aware that it's after 6 and this meeting was supposed to end at 6. So I'm wondering if we put off the final agenda item, which was, well, it's setting the meeting schedule and
Well,
format.
And you know,
But-
actually, I did not go to the action of putting together the calendar, so that would be, but generally, if members are agreeable to keeping the second Monday of the month, it would just be the time, and then I would be able to, I could present one at next meeting for acceptance, the
Okay,
actual calendar.
Councilor Perry?
yes. So that one, you know, I'm willing to look at the dates, but I have to drive my kids carpool every Monday. I cannot do meetings before 5:30. And 5:30 is I'm zooming here from Agawam back. I was able to switch this for this meeting, and unfortunately, I was not able to pick up my car because it was ready by 5. But so that's my only request, is that we move it to 5:30. Is I can
Okay.
I just can't be here.
So let me ask, would you rather it be 6?
I mean,
It sounds
5:30
like
is fine.
you,
5:30 is
okay,
fine. I
5:30
mean,
works? Okay.
yeah.
Can everybody, Councilor Maori, Councilor Stratton, can you make it 5:30?
I'm trying to check one thing right now. I was a little concerned. I mean, I actually would prefer an evening meeting, or maybe even the 6th, but I'm not going to push that too hard. I was a little concerned about overlap with other city meetings.
Yeah.
I know that, well, CPAC is meeting tonight. You know, that's, I mean, there are, unfortunately, planning and school committee always meet at the same time. I mean, there are these things, energy and disability. You know, I would, how should we say, I would happily agree to the next meeting at that time. But maybe we should set one meeting and research a little more. I'm floating ideas, not meaning to be.
Right.
Listen, 6 o'clock would help me if I get caught in traffic. I'm actually thinking of, now that we're going through it, for instance, when the Big E happens, it's so hard for me to get to and from. So I like that suggestion, Councilor Stratton, of let's try maybe 6 o'clock next meeting.
Councilor Maori, can you make it at 6?
Yes, and I was just
Does
going to
that-
say that, you know, these are just a relic of where, when we've had a meeting, there's no reason that we're locked into Mondays or in this time at all. And yeah, so I can make that time. And also, just another point of, you know, information, we do placeholders with these meetings. And of course, if there's nothing, you know, there's no agenda items, we don't just come in, you know, for fun. So we would have these as meeting times, and if there's no agenda items, then you as chair would make that determination and just let us know, you know, ahead
Okay.
of time. So that's how that
Well, what
works.
I'm hearing that we just make the next meeting, which is, can you tell us the date, Laura?
Yeah, that
That's
would
what I wanted to know.
be the first.
Sorry, I don't have Google open. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
I mean, which week are we thinking of?
I think it's the second Monday.
Yeah,
That would be the 9th of March.
that's true. This
Oh, wait.
end of February.
Oh. Do I feel like I had a possible conflict with that. Let me think.
Is that date right, Laura?
Yes, the 9th of March.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I need to check on one thing.
Oh, hey.
I'm sorry.
I have a friendly suggestion. We had to do this
Yeah.
in community resources, where the chair and vice chair will send out a request, or we can discuss, and then we can make it
Well,
happen.
if this
Luckily,
is,
we have
I think, can you make that date? Councilor
I will
Stratton?
know in about 30 seconds.
okay.
Okay. I think he's just checking one thing, and because I'd rather leave this meeting with another date settled. And then at the next meeting,
Yes,
we can talk
yes,
about.
that works.
Okay, great. So we have another date, and then we'll talk about, everybody should be thinking about if you don't want to meet on Mondays, when do you want to meet? All right. I think I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Motion to adjourn made by Counselor Maori, seconded by Counselor Stratton.
Counselor Stratton,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
and Counselor Loizal.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh,
Well, we just
Usually it's,
Oh, we
yeah.
didn't- 6 o'clock.
Next meeting, 6 o'clock.
Were you here for, hey Matt, how are you? Were you here for the legislative matter?
Yeah, I was trying to like, go up to.
Oh. Yeah.
out there isn't a
if
whole
there's
crowd
an
of other
item that
people.
If you were interested. Oh, okay. Oh, great.